The reason tracking macros is not working for you or your weight loss goals is because you're treating it like all the other fad diets. You're treating it like a diet, period, when it's a macro tool. It's a nutrition tool. You're making it tedious, you're making it hard, you're making it unsustainable, and really just annoying because you got to do all this work that feels like homework and you don't want to do it. And when you don't want to do it, you're not consistent with it. So you throw in the towel far before you get to your end goal. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we use macros with our clients as a temporary tool for a permanent result. First and foremost, what are macros all about? Why are they even important? Why are they on our radar? Why do we need to use them? The reality is it's a tool to gather data. That's all macros are. That's why I always say it's not really a diet. It's just a tool. It's a nutritional metric that we need to track in order to gauge where we're at. And when I say track macros, I guess I'm also saying count calories, right? Calories, macros, kind of under this umbrella of just generally having these numbers to gauge where our diet is at. And a few analogies that might help you this click in your head is the first one being a financial advisor. So for example, if you decide you were going to take a trip to Europe with your family and you tell your financial advisor, planner, accountant, or hypothetically, if you're broke, don't have those things and you don't even know what planning and budgeting is, this might not relate to you, but you can pretend. They're going to say what to you? Create a budget. Track these things, open another account. I need to look at your spending. And if you say, nah, I'm not really into that thing. I don't like budgeting. I don't want to count my money in and out. I'm just going to spend and cross my fingers. They're going to say you're shit out of luck. You're not going to go on a trip because you're not going to save any money. This is very obvious, right? You need to save money in order to spend money effectively to do cool things. Another example is gas in your car. You have a meter that tells you if you are empty or full. And that is a metric that allows you to gauge and understand the metric that keeps your car moving. You can do without it, but you're probably gonna run out of gas out of nowhere. You're not gonna get to the destination you wanna go. Another example of this is a GPS. We all know this one because this is the most commonly used one in our space. If you don't enter the starting address and the ending address, you don't know how to get there. All the streets that you have to turn on, the place you're starting at, the different addresses, those are your metrics. That's what tells you how to go from point A to point B. And if you don't have that in your GPS, you're just not going to see the result that you're after. Okay, so we get it. It is a metric. Macros are a tool that gives us data that we can gauge things with. And that's really why it's so important. It's just a way for us to adjust the plan after we assess where things are at. Because you can't adjust something that you don't measure, right? What gets measured gets managed. It's a really well-known saying. It's because if you're not tracking, you can't move things forward. You can't progress or adjust it to get you going forward. But not only that, this is also a tool for clients or people or you to become more aware of what you're eating, to become more aware of food labels, to become more aware of portion control, to become more aware of how much you actually need of calories or protein or fats or carbs or how big a meal should be. It also gives you awareness around calories as a whole. Because if we don't start counting calories or tracking things to begin with, then it's going to be difficult for us to understand how much we should take in. We can't be intuitive with our diet unless we intentionally track first. And that might be the end goal, but that's not where most people are at in the beginning, especially if they want to lose weight. That's why intentional eating doesn't really lead to weight loss. It's a maintenance approach. Now, if we think of a can of Coke versus a can of Coke Zero, if anybody watching this has ever tracked their calories, they know that they're probably going to choose the Coke Zero because when you're counting calories, you're not going to waste your calories on a regular can of Coke. You'd rather have the diet soda, a Coke Zero, because you can save the calories and still get a good taste, and then use those calories for something you'd rather eat and enjoy. But if you've never counted calories before and you don't have the education and awareness around what calories are and how many calories and grams of sugar and carbs are in that Coke, you're not going to think twice. It's very subconscious. You just grab the Coke and drink it. But now you can be more aware and make conscious decisions about better food habits because you're aware of what calories are and how many calories are in each item of food that you come in contact with day to day in a normal day of eating. This also helps people plan ahead. If you know how many calories you are to hit, you know how many macros per meal you're going to hit, or even just how much protein you're aiming to eat per day. It forces you to think ahead. You got to think about how you're going to reach those targets, and therefore you will plan your day of eating, usually the day before if you're smart, but maybe even the morning of. Either way, you're not playing macro Tetris or no macros at all and just eating as you go, which ultimately leads to bad results. Because if you're not tracking anything and you're just going about your day eating, you're probably not going to be moving in a specific direction, which is what this whole video and what your goal is all about. The problem with all of this is that it's unsustainable. Now, that is going to really be based on relative terms of who we are talking about. I have come in contact with countless people who say, I could track macros or calories forever. It doesn't bother some people. It doesn't stress them out. It doesn't cause anxiety. It doesn't make them obsessive. They love it. They're analytical, type A people, personalities. That's fine. Do your thing. 90% of people want to use macros to get them to a result, but eventually they want to stop tracking macros, stop weighing food, be more intuitive, or as I like to say, intentional, because nobody intuitively wants to make the right decision. You have to intentionally make good, positive decisions. But the point is most people want to get to a place where they can stop tracking macros, weighing their food, and being very analytical or structured with all of their diet. They want to be in a place where they have the result and they can sustain that result without it. They want to literally have their cake and eat it too. The reason most people fail at this is because they start a diet with the mentality that what they're doing in that moment has to be forever. They need to track macros forever. They need to weigh their food forever. They need to eat that exact way forever. They need to train that way forever. Once they start cardio, they need to do cardio forever and have the same step count forever. And the reality is that's not true. Fat loss phases and diets need to be temporary. They need to be periodized so that you can insert a phase or a season where you are targeting a goal, ramp up the dieting, ramp up the specificity, the tracking, the cardio, those things, and then remove yourself from that at the end in a structured way to get out of it. So the real reason people fail is because their mindset doesn't shift and they're not looking for a solution for the long term. Many people say if you are following a diet that you can't do for longer than insert amount of time, 30 days, 60 days, 120 days, whatever it is, then you found the wrong diet. That's not the diet for you. You need something that's more sustainable. I disagree with that. You could follow a diet for a short period of time and it could be something that's not sustainable for a year. That's okay. Make sure it's sustainable for the duration of time you need in order to accomplish your fat loss goal, and then be willing to shift your mindset and change how you're dieting, change how you're tracking, and change the things you're focused on in order to sustain the result, not the diet, but sustain the result. We've created a system that allows clients to do this. And I want to teach you that in this video and kind of give you an overview and a framework that allows people to use tracking as a tool to navigate them towards the goal, much like a GPS, but then get them to a place where they know the roads from driving to the destination, and now they can get there without using that same GPS. I mean, it's the perfect analogy. Really think about this. The first time you drive to a new destination, you use GPS because you've never been there before. The only other time you use a GPS is if you need to get to the same destination you've been many times faster. And you want to know what is the fastest route. I'm going to use the Waze app so I can make sure I avoid cops on the way that are going to pull me over for speeding. And I'm going to find the back roads to get there faster. That would be like a photo shoot or a wedding or getting on stage or something serious where you need to dial in, track your metrics so that you can get to the same place you've been, but get there a little bit faster on short notice. Otherwise, we only use that GPS in the beginning. And so how this works starts with the self-formation framework. This is something that I created as a way to explain the process of somebody transforming their body, their physique, their results, and it carries over through everything. It's the self-formation because it relies on self-control, self-discipline, self-belief, and then finally self-respect and self-confidence. So when we look at this, we start from a place of self-control, and tracking macros really does help us do this. When we track macros, when we plan our diet, when we create new habits, we have to say no to something that we've been doing, right? We have to create change by saying no or just challenging ourselves to get uncomfortable, which requires self-control. Self-control is the ability to make a positive decision when you don't want to make that decision because it's uncomfortable, it's challenging, and it provides resistance. As we develop self-control, we get results. Those results lead us to have more self-discipline. Self-discipline is being able to take action and move forward when you're not motivated. And the only way to develop self-discipline and be able to keep moving forward, even on the days you are not motivated to do it, or you just don't want to do blank, whatever that habit or action is to do the work developing self-control, which creates a state of discomfort around you. And you positioning yourself in that discomfort, you become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that develops this ability to take action even when you're not motivated. Once you have this amount of self-discipline, you've proven to yourself that you can do things, right? During these self-control and self-discipline stages, you've done a lot of things that you probably didn't think you should do. And it's why I often encourage our clients, once you step into a difficult thing, reflect. When you're done, reflect, journal, meditate, pray, do whatever you got to do to sit and think about what you just did. The reason this is important is because before you did the thing, you use self-control and self-discipline to talk yourself into it. Because I guarantee you were talking shit in your head, telling yourself that it was going to be hard, telling yourself that you're not used to this, telling yourself that you don't have the genetics, you don't have the skills, it's going to be scary, and you're in your own head. But then when you do it anyway, because you have that self-control and discipline, you've established more self-belief. self-belief. And if you reflect on it, you prove yourself and you kind of run the game tape, let's say. You look back and go, damn, I just did the thing that I didn't think I could do. I just took action on something that I was really uncomfortable taking action on. I just learned a new skill because I didn't know how to do that shit before I did it. And when you can see that proof, that is what creates self-belief. And the more self-belief you have, the less self-doubt you have. Once you're in this state, results are happening and you're creating more of them, which ultimately leads to self-respect. Self-respect is very similar to self-confidence, and you see that confidence every time you walk in a room. But the self-respect aspect is you're becoming somebody that you look up to. You're becoming somebody that looks like a role model to you, or that you literally have respect for because you've done the same things that that person does. Take a moment to just think about anybody you look up to. Take a moment to think about anybody that you think has their shit together, has great results, that you are inspired by, that you greatly respect, and ask yourself why you respect them. You're gonna list out traits and characteristics. They're super disciplined. They're always on time. They're very productive. They never get distracted. They're a really loving person. They're very generous. These are all traits which are developed from this exact self-formation process, which is why we say the fitness is the catalyst to growth in all areas of life. Because when you do this stuff for fitness and transforming your physique, you develop those traits that make you a better father or mother or husband or brother or sister or wife or business owner or coach or client or whatever. This same exact self-formation process can be looked at from a nutrition lens. And from a nutrition lens, it's pretty simple. That self-control piece, that is our starting fat loss phase. Self-control is the skill we need to develop more than anything when we first start a fat loss phase. And this looks like a very detail-oriented tracking model. We step into the fat loss phase, tracking a lot of the metrics. We're tracking our macros. We're looking at our weight. We're measuring our body composition sites. We're taking progress pictures. This phase might last 8 weeks, 12 weeks. It could last a year. It depends on how much weight you have to lose. The more weight you have to lose, obviously, the longer you're going to stay in this phase. It does not mean you don't develop self-control, discipline, belief, and respect as you go. It just means that you're going to be in this fat loss phase with self-control being the predominant factor. And that requires a lot of tracking. You need to be able to track your metrics, track your calories, track your macros. Once you get to your actual result, we usually start going through a reverse diet. And this is where we have this structured flexibility phase. This phase is very similar to self-discipline. We have to have discipline to have structured flexibility. You can eat whatever you want and fit in your calories. We all know this. Flexible dieting, if it fits your macros, eat a Twinkie every day, you can still lose weight, blah, blah, blah. It's great and you should do it. But I promise you, it's actually harder to eat 2 Oreos and stop than it is to just not put the damn Oreos in your shopping cart, which is why sometimes it's better in initial fat loss phases to focus on self-control while in public, because you have surrounding accountability, and just not put the Oreos in your cart. That is the self-control. The self-discipline is when you buy the Oreos, you have them in your pantry, and you choose to have them on Thursday and only have a few. But this is structured flexibility. You don't need to hit your macros on the dot. You're focused on ranges. You don't need to eat perfect and clean and follow a meal plan all the time. You're just maintaining the weight that you already lost by either staying at your calories or still reversing them up to a higher maintenance intake. And you should be incorporating more flexibility and using discipline to have structure within that flexibility. After we get through this phase, we move into what we call hybrid tracking. This is like a hybrid macro tracking model. And usually this means we're not always tracking macros. This relies on a lot of self-belief. It also relies on a lot of trust and belief in your coach if they're guiding you through this. But nonetheless, you get to a stage where you're going to remove these macros. And that's hard for a lot of people. You've tracked macros, you've done the work, you've gotten the result. Now we're going to rely on self-belief, which has been generated because you have the track record. You can look behind you and see the results you've gotten, the action you've taken, and the habits you've formed along the way. You know damn well you can do it and you've created the result. Now it's time to do it a different way and rely on the self-belief you have in order to not track macros all the time. This could start with taking a couple days off a week, maybe not tracking on the weekends. Maybe it's you save it for a vacation. You go on a week-long vacation with the family, don't track your macros, you can't weigh your food. Just be intentional, eat like an adult, nourish your body, and focus on portion control, which you learned from tracking. This is the whole point of this pathway leading you to the end result. This is a period of time where we use tracking sparingly. We use tracking in bigger ranges. This means you could be like within a 50-gram range. You're eating between 250 and 300 grams of carbs, depending on your activity. Listen to your hunger signals and your performance needs and your recovery demands and adjust your calories accordingly. Maybe you're just tracking calories and protein and letting carbs and fats just kind of fluctuate at first. Maybe you're only tracking protein because that's where you suck. Maybe it's more of mental notes. I'm going to eat 5 meals a day and just make sure there's protein in it. Maybe you don't track at all. Maybe it's a progression from one to the next. Either way, this hybrid period is where we track sometimes so that we can maintain the result that we've achieved, maintain the caloric intake we need to maintain, but we avoid tracking all the time. We want to be less neurotic with it. We want to be less focused, less detailed, and just be more flexible without having the numbers or the bumpers in our bowling lane. And then the last phase of this pathway that we take clients through after we've gone through self-control, which is this tracking phase where we're really trying to lose fat and get to the end result. Then we go into this self-discipline phase, which we are increasing our structured flexibility. We move into the self-belief phase, which is where we believe in the habits we've established and we stop tracking so much, and we kind of have this hybrid approach. So we have enough numbers to know we're on point, but not so many that they're controlling everything we eat. And then we move into this last stage, which is that self-respect and self-confidence. Now it is time to not track. It's time to only be intentional. It's time to live in our new body and not bounce back. And we won't bounce back and we won't rebound from this place because we've gone this path. There's a 95% likelihood that people will gain the weight back after they diet. This is a well-known statistic. How true is this? It's hard to say because there's a lot of factors that go into that study. One being that I could be in that because I did fail the first few diets that I tried. But the point is 95% of people gain the weight back. Sometimes they're second, third, fourth, and fifth too. Either way, the people who successfully keep the weight off, they go through this process. Eventually, they get to a place where they can sustain their weight loss without tracking all the numbers, because most people, 99% of people, don't want to track macros and weigh their food forever. And even the people that are 25, young and hungry, and they're like, nah, I could do this forever. You don't know what you're going to think when you're 75. There's no reason for you to track macros when you're 75. There's probably no reason for you to track macros when you're 65. Regardless, there's no business in you tracking macros for the next 3 decades of your life. Let's just say that. And so knowing that this is the ending destination, sustaining a result and just intuitively eating, more likely intentionally eating, requires a process. And if you go through this self-formation process properly, and you go through this pathway of tracking macros like a GPS, using it when you don't know the road ahead, and using it sparingly when you need to get there faster or bring yourself back into the correct lane. Let's say you take a back road on your trip and you get lost. What do? You pull up the GPS. That's that hybrid approach. Well, let's track again for a week so we can get back in. And you learn from that process. Eventually, you don't need that GPS. And that is the goal of a successful self-formation or just general periodized fat loss approach. So if you've tried tracking macros before and you failed over and over again, and you look at it like, this doesn't work, this is tedious, this makes me obsessive. It's not the macros that makes you obsessive that becomes tedious or anything like that. It's you, the dieter. It's not the diet, it's you. And this goes for every diet. It's your personality and how you are going about the diet that is causing the obsessive tendencies. And if you follow an approach like this, it will not be obsessive and it will lead you to the result you want without all the headaches along the way.